My name is Siri. I'm a designer. I've been in this field for 18 years, built and created a lot of applications, whether it's in e-commerce or medical field or gaming, electric cars, energy industry. I've done a lot of work in all of those.
Thank you for joining us today. So, our first question is, what inspired you to join the UX field?
I'm engineer by education. I've got my master's in computer engineering. During the course, I got to know that I don't enjoy coding as much as I thought I would. So it was a process of elimination that I decided to still be in the software side, but not code, still be part of the product, but really be hands-on from the beginning. That's when I got to know there is something called as designing or architecture that happens before coding. So that's how I came into this field.
So, what are tasks you do as a UX designer in your job?
So first, let me tell you what UX designer means. That way, it's easier for you to understand. So it's more of an interactive, so you can respond for my ask. So have you ever been in a park which has sidewalks? There are a lot of sidewalks, but there is still this dirt road which is made where everybody's walking on that path because it's a shortcut and it's easier to go to that. So when you see that brown path, that actually is technically called user experience because for them they felt that, oh, this is the easiest way to go, so I'll just start using it. But if you look at the overall picture, when somebody was planning a park, they were like, oh, this is where we'll give the cement roads as a sidewalk so people can walk. So that's like a product. But if you look at the brown path, that's the experience. So what do you pick from that? Eventually, when they are organizing the park, they'll give a sidewalk or a walking path. So it's part of the plan and everybody uses that. So that's what is, in simple terms, giving the experience back to the user because they already told this is what I want to do and this is how I'm going to walk anyway. So you're just going to oblige that and walk in that. Since you're technology kids, let me explain in terms of software applications. I'm pretty sure you have opened your school applications to see your grades or see your classes. You see a lot of options from the left side where it says like, hey, here's your portfolio, here are your classes, here's your teachers list. So why do you think it's always on the left and not on the right? So there is a method to this madness. So the experience is most of the people when the software started are right-handed. So the mouse usage is always on the right. So their activity or actions are actually happening on the right side. So that's why the menu is on the left and the experience of the application where you open, you see your scores is on the right. If I have to dig a little more deeper, your phones, pretty much everybody is a thumb user. So that's why a lot of things are very closer to your thumb. Imagine having home button on the left hand corner and you're like, "Ah, I have to hold one hand and then you're using the second hand." So this is all what is called the user experience. The part of the journey for a user experience person is not having this frustrating moments, whether it's a physical park or if it's a physical park or an application on a phone, they always use like, oh, if it's a single thumb user, where do we keep and how should a button react? I'm like going to say like, hey, show me my grades, and you hit the grades button. It shouldn't show your teacher's information in there. It should show your grades. So that is the button's reaction to open that page. So this is what is user experience. And as it going back to your question of what I do, if we are building an application, the first conversation is what is that we are trying to solve for the users. Let's say I'm opening an ice cream store. What is that I have to give for the users? They should be able to see the menu. They should be able to see the price. They should be able to like order, whether it's ordering by one person or if it's a group. So these are the things that I have to come up with. How do I know this? We actually already have certain things in place. So we just know the information. Let's say if it's a new product, it doesn't exist. Then we call a lot of people in and ask them, like, how do you want this to be? If you are using it, how do you want this to be? So we collect that information. Within 10 people, you get an average of 60% same information if it's the product is working or not. So you take that information, you draw the screens on paper. You don't full on go and coding and build it because it's too much of energy and it costs a lot of money for the companies. So you draw on papers, bring these people back and like, hey, this is what I've drawn. This is where the button is. This is how it will react. This is what the result will be. We do that, and then we get the feedback. Oh, I like this. I like the color. I don't like how this page is going here. The cost, the number, the pricing is hidden. I'm not able to know exact cost that it's going to be at the end of it. So we do all of this, go back and redesign, and that's when we build. So as a designer, this is all the pre-work that is done before it goes into coding. And I'm also part of their coding when the developers are doing it. I'll be there helping them understand why we have drawn this way and why it has to be coded in this aspect of it. So that's the work.
Thank you so much for your response and putting it in a way that we can really relate to, because it definitely helped us understand what a UX designer does. So, when you're designing an interface, how do you make sure that your personal preferences don't get in the way of designing?
When I start designing in the beginning of the career, it's always like, oh, how do I assume that all of the people will like it? I had to put myself as a user. If I'm using the product, how would it be? And I would draw according to that. But even before we go to the users, there is this conversation that we have between other designers where it's called UX crit. It's not really criticizing, it's more of conversation. So we go there and like, hey, this is how I'm thinking, this is how I'm going to have this application drawn. We go through the conversation and people with different opinions, right? That everyone has their own opinion about how it should be. We have this conversation. Then we always have this step where like you have to understand if the design is going to help the user first thing, and if the design what I'm telling is going to be okay with the business, which means the company, because they have to put a lot of money into it to build it. I can say very fancy way of like, hey, just give your voice and like, hey, phone, just click on the login button because I'm too lazy to even click. It might be too much of effort for the dev to build that because you have to then integrate the AI elements, voice recognition elements, then reacting to that particular page to see if there is that login button on it. So there are a lot of elements in there which can't be sustainable at every level. So business is like, hey, we can't do that. So we always have to check. It's not just solving for the users, it's also understanding if business can give that money to build that. So at that point, we check, okay, what I've designed is solving what we want for the users, thumbs up. Business, meh. So I have to go back and draw something which is good for the users. But we again come back and have the crit sessions where we're talking and like, hey, is this okay for the users? Yes. So the other aspect is if I'm the only designer there, I wouldn't have anybody. So I would go to the team, which is quality assurance or quality testing, who are called QAs, who are in the product. They're very aware of how the product works. So I would bring them in and have this discussion of like, hey, this is how I'm building the product. This is how this feature is going to go about. So they would come back and like, hey, it's working according to the product, but these features might be very difficult for us to implement. So that's how the conversation happens. So it's not just, it's my choice, I'm designing it, it has to be my way. It's never that. You're just going about making sure the product solves the problem for the users and for the business at the same time. You have to put yourself as a user, because if you're using it, most of the times that's how a average person is also thinking. I want this way. It's like you switch on a fan. It's the same way most people will do. Of course, there might be a remote, which is an advanced version, but majority would go switch on the knob or turn the knob or a button. So the average information is pretty much out there. It's not something I'm inventing new right now.
In your line of work, do you ever use coding?
Majority of the times, no. So it also depends on the company where you're working and what kind of work you're doing. In UX designer, it's purely drawing. So there are tools which help you draw those. It's like, if you know civil engineering, they use craft paper and the pencil and the drafting machine, everything. It's pretty much like that. It's like a blueprint of the application. So it's mostly drawing about the applications. The coding doesn't do. Right now, in this, like I would say, from last year, there is something called as vibe coding, which is technically you're just telling your information or giving you information. A lot of the tools which I use for designing, they do have that, where you would go and like, hey, I want to have a login page which has a login button, a cancel button, forgot password, like the basic information, with the color shade of this blue and elements of logo on the right hand corner. Give me a page. Just give the information, or a command, if you have to say. It gives out a lot of screens for you to choose from. Then you still have to take it and modify, because it's not like it understands your whole company's elements of how the buttons are, the size of the buttons, how the logo is, or the colors that are used in that particular application. So it still builds by giving that command, but it's not technically, you're not writing a code, it's just you're giving the information and it gives back. And I didn't want to code. That's the reason I'm a UX designer. So
What skills do you think would be useful to be successful as a UX designer? And do you think any of those skills were transferred over from your education as a computer engineer?
part of the education, there's a course that you can start with. It's called Human Computer Interfaces. It talks about how the or basic rules about the interface. If you take a computer, how that page or the dimension of that page is, and where the elements should be, the basic information and basic knowledge of how it should be. If I have to say in a very generic way, like your alphabets, you start from A to Z. Why do you start from A? It's because how you're trained, like this is how the order is, and this are the 26 alphabets, and this is how each one is, uh, the vocal range for each alphabet. You're taught this. So in human computer interfaces, they teach you like how the interface should be, the basic elements in the interfaces, and how it has to be trained if you have to build an application. So you get that information. So that's how you can start. And that, of course, is how you start your journey as a designer as well, because you need that basic foundation. Everything else is more common sense, because you should know, like, hey, if I want to hit login button, I know it's going to land me into that instead of closing the browser. So those things are common sense, but the foundation through education is from human computer interfaces. There are a lot of courses out there. Right now, there are courses directly attaining to user experience, or you can say human user experiences, or interface designing, interaction designing, all those come under that. So that gives you that basic knowledge to start, and then you build upon it. You go back for retraining in like how to use AI in terms of design, because that's like the new trend. It's like, how do you get the vibe coding in? How do you get your commands to be lodged in? Those come as perks, but the basic foundation is human computer interfaces.
So, what's the ideal education for a UX designer?
So after high school, you can go into your computers, whatever, whichever course you want to. There are a lot of design courses, which doesn't really have to be software designing. It can be arts designing, where you understand how to add colors, how to, because right now y- so when I started, this was 18 years ago, there was very specific user experience or UX designer, which is separate from UI designer. UI is the visual designer or the graphic designer who puts life into by giving colors or breathers and how specifically that. Right now in the last 5 years, it's becoming a single umbrella called product designer, because you're starting with black and white, you're coming into interactions, then you're coming into color, and you're doing the whole application. So you can start with graphic designing courses or just design courses. You add human computer interface courses in that, and there's a whole section of credits for just the interface or interaction designer courses. So you build on that, and you can come. If you're interested in doing masters, there are a lot of design courses very specific to UX and UI, which you can go about. But in bachelor's, you can start with the HCI. It's called short form for you folks to look up code as HCI. HCI has a lot of categories with them. Let's start with basic 101 and then 201, 301. All the years have that. Then you add design courses, which technically fall under art classes or MFA and all those things. But that helps you build a whole career about it. If you have to build it through education of bachelor's, or else there is a 6 months course, crash course you can do outside of it, that helps you everything as a package, and you can just start.
Being a UX designer seems to have a lot to do with visuals, logical thinking, and a lot of drawing and interface. So, how do you see your job evolving in the next couple of years due to AI?
In terms of visual, it's at the end product of the designing the interface. UI elements is where you get the visual aspect of it. In terms of UX, yes, it is logical thinking. AI will actually help enhance it and build it faster. It may take as physical hours, even with the experience. If I have to draw one screen, it may take me 30 minutes to 45 minutes. With AI, I can just do that in maybe 15 minutes. So it'll help me in terms of reducing the time. It'll never be able to replace, because there should be the person still telling that interface that it has to look certain way. The element has to be placed in a certain box of if you divide a phone application in half, it has to be in the top half, it has to be in the leftmost corner. For the hamburger, it's the three lines, it's called hamburger menu. Then there are three dots on that where it's generally used for the logout. It has to be on the right hand corner. So somebody still has to tell the logic. And eventually, when it gives the screen, which I was talking about, like the vibe coding, where I'm just giving the command to it, it's giving me the screen. I still have to modify. What happens here is, instead of taking 45 minutes, I'm just taking 15 minutes to build the screen. So it's going to help me build the screen faster, so we can give a lot of products out faster. So let's say, instead of waiting 1 year for a product launch, we can push out 10 products, and we can see which products are working with the users. And based on that, the company can grow faster. So the way I see it is, AI is going to help the designers build applications faster.
How long does it take a full application to be completed from start to finish?
So that's like asking how long you will sleep. It depends on your tiredness, it depends upon how your day went by and all. On average, if I'm building, so 90% of designing actually happens to be enhancing the feature which already exists, because Majority of the applications are already out there. I worked in a company where they would sell movies and TV. So what you're doing is it's similar to iTunes. The company right now is called Fandango, but it used to be called as Voodoo. So what you would do is you go there, browse the movie, and like, oh, I want to buy this or I want to rent it. You add it to the cart, you check out, you're done. So this application, it's not new. It exists because a lot of e-commerce, it's the same process. Look at the page, add it, check out. So what I'm generally doing is enhancing, making it faster without actually going to the detail page. Can I just buy it from there? I'm pretty sure all of you used Amazon checkouts where it's like single click, which is buy now instead of adding it to the cart. So it's like that. So I'm generally enhancing the feature. So it would take based on how big the feature is. If I'm just doing that one click, it would take me a day or two to design that. But if I'm doing the whole interface where like the one click doesn't exist, so I have to readjust the page to have that button introduced in that column. And if let's say they don't even have a individual poster view, it's all like 9 posters on a screen, and where do I add buy now for every individual? It'll be a redundant thing, so I have to readjust the screen and then bring it to, instead of 9 I would bring it to 3, because it's more than columns and rows. Now it's divided into just columns, the poster, the name, single click, so it's not too many buy nows on your face. So I'm changing the interface of it. For that, I might take a couple of more days extras. So it always depends on the feature. And I had an opportunity where got to build 0 to 1 product. When I say 0 to 1, it means the product never existed. This is the first time in the world that is being built. So for that, for me to start from beginning to finish, it took me 2 months because the product never existed. I don't know how the users would perceive this or use this. So I had to do a lot of interviews, then have to build every individual screen, go back to research of how, as a product, this would work, and then build the screen. So it took me 2 months. So when 0 to 1 comes in, there's a lot of research in the background. If it's an enhancement based on the feature, it can be a day or it can be a week. So it depends on how big the feature of the product you're building is.
That was really insightful to understand like all the different types of applications you complete. So thank you. You mentioned how some projects take longer than others. So looking at that, how do you maintain a proper work-life balance?
So when a product comes into picture, there is something called as product roadmap. So there is a person called product manager who is with us in the beginning, who tells like, hey, this is the feature we have to build based on the work that we have seen before, or an assumption is, let's say it's going to take 2 months. So they would come with that proposal to us. As a designer, they would come and like, hey, this is the feature, this is how we want to build, and the average time is 2 months. You would look at the feature, go through. If you're beginning in starting of your career, you wouldn't know how to estimate. You would just stick to the product manager's timeline and go, okay, two months. Let me start an average day of like 8 hours a week. As you're going through, you eventually will realize, oh, it's not 2 months, it's going to take me 3 months. But since I committed, you eventually start working more. Instead of 8 hours, you might be working 10 or 12. That kind of is in the beginning of the career because you're still trying to establish, still trying to understand how much time and how big the feature is. And remember the UX crits that I was talking about before? So in the crit comes and you're like, hey, whatever you built doesn't even make sense. It's not going to help any of our users. So think another route. So you go back and restart again. That's when you realize, like, if you're drawing for a product, you're not just drawing one solution, you're drawing more than two. It's actually called mild to wild. Mild is based on what you know. using the product information, you're drawing those. An average is increasing the feature limit instead of just saying that, hey, I'm not just going to give you hamburger with 3 menu options. I might give you 6, futuristic thinking how it would look like if we add so and so features. So when there's 6 icons or 6 items showing up on the screen, how much space an individual screen would look like. And then there is a wild option where you're imagining everything can be built. The engineers are amazing rock stars. You're just going to build a whole feature for the company, right? So you're going to draw all of this. This comes as you get experience, and you kind of always ask for more time than what product says. You can finish it earlier, which is good, but you always say or mention like, your estimates are amazing, but it needs to be added 3 more weeks to the work because this is how it's going to be. Eventually, there comes a point where none of your timelines matter. The company decided we have to push this feature, and everybody's working overnight. Or it comes like, oh, we don't even need this feature, so what you worked for 2 months doesn't matter. It's scrapped. So it depends. But as you're starting, you might have to work more. And there is also this impression mode because they need to know what you're doing and what you're going to build is good. For that, you need to put more of yourself out there. So work life balance is more work and life is less. Eventually, you come to a point of like where you know exactly how much time each product takes, how you're going to build, how you're going to impress your team. You'll balance more, and your work is technically less because you're by then you know the ways to handle the work, and your life gets better. It's like your homeworks. You tell all your parents that, oh, I'll finish in 2 hours, but you'll end up till midnight because you estimated your times wrong.
Yeah, extremely accurate. You just shared some of the challenges a UX designer might face, but what are some of your most rewarding moments in your career?
So there are a couple of applications that I've done where we got patents. So that means nobody else have done that, and we kind of solved a problem for your users, which most other companies felt like, oh, this is amazing and good to know. And because we patented it, they couldn't use that. It's kind of rewarding, but at the same time, kind of sad because that would make other companies also adapt for the users and make it better for them. Majority of the rewards come from when you see your application used by people you know and they're like, oh, this is nice. So you're still not at the age where you're going to fill this. You should talk to your parents and ask them like the most frustrating applications that they've ever filled. It majority of the time involve financial applications, which is bank applications, which ask a lot of details, and healthcare. They'll ask every detail. You'll feel like they're, why do they want to know everything about me kind of applications. They're not smooth. They're very frustrating, but they still have to do it. So they'll finish them no matter what. I had an opportunity to update a lot of banking applications for the company I worked, for a bank I worked. We got the response within launch of, I think, 2 weeks that the frustration point has reduced by 60%, which means it was smoother. It didn't solve all the frustration because it's never will. You still have to read a lot of papers, you still have to fill out a lot of papers, but it was smoother. So if you go back to the 60% and ask, like, would you fill this application again? They would say yes. So those feedbacks kind of direct user feedbacks kind of are rewarding. It also goes back to the work. The main important task is how can we reduce the frustration this user comes back to this. It's like gaming. You don't like the game because it's not because you're losing so many times, it's just because you don't know the tricks of how to play that game. It becomes very frustrating and you're like, I don't want to use this anymore. That means the company lost its main ability to have many users play that game. So, as a designer, UX designer, very specifically, my take is to reduce those frustrating points. And when we hear those feedback from the users directly, it is very yeah. It I wouldn't say life fulfilling thing because it's still a work, but the rewards are good because you hear from the users, oh, the application that I built has helped some users have less frustration.
It's so amazing that you can actually see your impact on people in your day-to-day life.
So our final question of the day is being a UX designer a career to consider?
I would definitely say yes, because it kind of is also AI proof for right now compared to if you want to go into computers, coding is I would say we are part of the contribution for the coders to not have jobs because we build the screen so well. All I have to do is like tell the AI tools like give me exactly the screen and that would build it. So we still have that power. So I would say it's still AI proof and you should be able to do the work. The only aspect is because in the last couple of years, it's more tending towards product designing, which means end to end, where you also have to have that visual ability. You might have to dab into art classes. And if you're not into art, it might be very frustrating. So, but definitely a career to consider. And you still have that, uh, I would say, power to be s- part of that product where you are telling how the product can be and you're defining those rules for your users. You're teaching good habits or bad habits, whichever way it goes. You're the one having that power to build that application. So still good career for sure.
So I think that's all our questions for today. Thank you so much for joining us. This was a really amazing interview.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a good afternoon. Bye.
You too.
Wow, guys, that was such an insightful interview with Siri, the UX designer. So let's debrief. What did we learn from that interview? I can start. I really liked how she talked about these small details that UX designers pay attention to. So, like why our menu bar is on the left side and why the three dots are on the right side. It's just something you never think about when you're using an application. And just to think that UX designers think about this every day, it's just really interesting.
Yeah, there's so much thought that goes behind every little thing on a website or an app. Even like if this needs to be like a centimeter higher or a centimeter lower.
Yeah, and if you don't enjoy coding but you want to do something to do with interface, this is perfect because it's more drawing and logic thinking oriented rather than coding. However, you do work with people who do code.
Yeah.
And UX designers, they design like a variety of different applications. Like she could just be updating a website that or like an application that's already up and running, or she could be doing like a 0 to 1, which she said she is when you start from scratch. So there's a variety of things she could do.
Definitely.
Yeah, one more thing that she said is like currently UX design is sort of like AI proof, at least for the time being. And also one thing I found funny is that she thought that UX design sort of contributes to like the fact that AI might sort of take over computer engineering and coding.
Yeah.
So if you're not interested in coding, well, you can also help bring them down.
If you really don't like computer scientists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything
Oh,
else?
okay.
Yeah.
You know when we start saying yeah, we have run out of things to say.
I mean, you guys kind of covered the whole thing, but I like how she says, if you really like it, then do it. But then again, everyone says that.
I feel like every career is a career to consider if you're passionate about it or if it's something that you enjoy.
Yeah, that's definitely what matters the most.
Yeah, she said like if you wanted like if you're good at art and you like
Yeah.
art, she said UX design is definitely a career.
Yeah.
I like how she went from engineer and then now she's against engineers.
I think she very likely touched on the fact that because she didn't like computer engineering, she left it. But I think she undermined how much confidence and how much effort that takes. So it's definitely something that we should highlight.
Yeah. Another thing that she mentioned after the interview, so it's not in the video, is that as a UX designer, you're like thinking about all these different apps and ways that you need to design your interface so that different like audiences can take it in. So she mentioned that you sort of learn how to talk to these different audiences, whether that's like a 5-year-old or a 60-year-old.
Yeah. It definitely helps with their communication skills. Well, if that's all, go ahead and check out our full video if you're interested, and check out our T2C Insta page.
Thank you.
Bye.